Carrie Scott, author of the book Buddha's Closet and founder of the Soul Selves Framework. This is the newest episode of Hanger Management. I know I took a break for a little bit, but I'm excited to come back and use this platform as a space to practice talking about fashion and shame. I do have a podcast interview coming up at the beginning of January, specifically talking about that topic of fashion and shame. And I know I have thought about it a lot, and I have so many ideas and concepts rolling around in my brain around how these two are linked and how they've impacted me. But speaking about it is something that I haven't had a lot of practice, and I'm realizing that I need to practice speaking my thoughts and ideas in order to articulate them clearly. So this episode is jumping off with this corduroy puffy jacket that I found at the thrift store, I think last year. It may even be 2 years ago now. I've kind of lost track of time. But on a clear, cold day like today, it is the perfect jacket to wear out when I'm doing my errands on my way to work. And I think the topic that's jumping into my mind today to talk about is this idea of thrifting. And the majority of my clothes do come from thrift stores, and that has been the case for the majority of my life. But for a long time I felt a huge amount of shame around that. And I know where we're at in terms of our evolution as a society. Thrifting has become more mainstream. It's becoming more popular. It is something much like many people are comfortable talking about, sharing about. But I think I still hold a lot of the shame that I used to feel when I was younger about thrifting. But at the same time, it is such a personal experience. Like shopping, going to the mall. I gotta go back to high school. Going to the mall with my friends, or my friend at the time, to buy new clothes or go shopping was never a positive experience for me. I never felt like I had the money to invest in new clothes, and I was sort of just following my friend around from place to place while she bought clothes. And I would always leave with this really uncomfortable feeling. It was never something that I wanted to do. It was never something that I wanted to participate in. And I developed a really uncomfortable relationship with shopping malls and avoided them for a really long time. But when I went thrift store shopping, it always seemed like a bit more of it was always a much more enjoyable experience, but I often did it alone. And I think I could really tune into the quality of the fabrics and find items that were, held some sort of meaning to me. And there was this experience, and when you think about what's going on inside of your mind chemically, whenever I am feeling a little bit down, my first thought is to go to the thrift store in order to find something, which is it gives me that dopamine hit that I'm missing. And so it's an interesting observation to be able to tune into that and realize that the experience that I have as a thrift store shopper is actually, it is in a sense part of my mental health routine. And I have to be careful of that, because I think it's important to realize that there's other ways to find that dopamine release in my life, and it doesn't have to be through that outward expenditure, that outward seeking, and to gauge that, in terms of what I'm bringing into my life, whether it's something that I need, or am I doing it purely for the experience, for the dopamine. And so this brings up a whole other area of shame that we are so, in this society, in Western culture in particularly, so conditioned to look outside of ourselves for that fulfillment, to look outside of ourselves for that experience and that sense of satisfaction, and to get whatever chemical combination we get when we fulfill that next new thing in our life, that next item, that next purchase, that next experience. And so businesses have obviously caught on to this, and we are fed this information, this advertising, that we need more. We will feel better when we have this. We'll feel better when we have this. We'll feel better when we have this. And it goes on and on and on. And what I've been noticing is that this idea of having more and having more in the next item and the next item is having to become a bit excessive, so that the next new thing is just enough different or bigger or more extravagant, or has one new thing than the last thing, so that it has that it triggers us to be like, oh well, I don't have that particular size of item, then I need the next one. And I heard this statistic today about Australia and how it's typical that the average Australian now buys 55 to 65 new items of clothing every year. And that just sort of dumbfounded me in terms of the amount of consumption and where we're at worldwide in terms of the amount of consumption and the amount of secondhand waste, particularly clothing waste, that creates. And more I'm seeing this imagery of where this secondhand clothing travels to in other parts of the world in order to be recycled or sold. And it's causing this incredible waste problem where beaches in Ghana are covered in clothing that's been discarded from North America. And that I find it all just so incredibly disturbing. And it makes me realize that, like, this idea of consumption, we need to consume less, but we also, I think more importantly, need to really find that satisfaction that we look externally for. We have to find it within ourselves. And that is the practice that I want to share. That is the practice that Buddhist Closet talks about. That is the practice that is going to have the most profound impact on us globally, is when we are able to turn our awareness inward and realize that that satisfaction that we're constantly seeking outside and that we're told we can find with the next item and the next item is just this loop of consumerism, this loop of fulfillment. But it's available within us as individuals at any time and always accessible. And by tuning into that, we can find that inner fulfillment and release the need for all of the excess stuff. We find out that when we turn our awareness inwards, that we are enough and we don't need anything external to be enough, to be more, to find fulfillment and satisfaction. Thank you for tuning in as always, and I will continue this conversation on shame and fashion and the cycle of fulfillment again in another episode. Thinking of you. Thanks very much.